Rome, the Eternal City, the capital of the most powerful republic the world had ever seen. For centuries, Romans had feared one thing above all, the rise of a single man who might use the army, not for Rome, but against Rome itself. In 88 BC, that nightmare became reality. Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a man born into poverty, a gambler, a womanizer, a man with red-tinged hair and piercing blue eyes, did the unthinkable. He marched his legions, loyal only to him, through the sacred gates of Rome. Shields clashed against shields, swords glinted in the sun, and Roman citizens screamed in horror as Roman soldiers, sons of Rome itself, turned their blades inward. It was the first time in history that a Roman general had led his army into the city against its own government. And it would not be the last. Julius Caesar, Pompey, Crassus, Augustus. They would all follow the bloody trail Sulla had carved. But who was this man? How did he rise from obscurity, from a family in ruins, to seize absolute power over Rome, and then, shockingly, to walk away from it? This is the story of Sulla, the man who conquered Rome. Rise under Marius, and rivalry begins. The first major test of Sulla's career came in the Jugurthan War in North Africa. Jugurtha, the cunning king of Numidia, had been humiliating Roman armies through bribery and guerrilla tactics. Marius was sent to end the war, but it was Sulla, serving under him, who played the decisive role. Through careful negotiation, and some say through lavish bribes, Sulla orchestrated the capture of Jugurtha himself. Rome rejoiced. Jugurtha was paraded through the streets in chains, and Marius claimed the glory. But everyone in the legions knew the truth. It had been Sulla who had engineered the victory. From that moment, the rivalry between the older Marius and the ambitious Sulla began to simmer. Years later, during the Social War, a bloody conflict where Rome's Italian allies rose up demanding citizenship, Sulla proved himself as one of Rome's greatest generals. He fought with ruthless efficiency, crushing rebellion after rebellion. His soldiers adored him. He was strict but fair, rewarding bravery with gold and punishing cowardice with severity. He shared their hardships, drank with them, and remembered every man's name. This loyalty would prove decisive, because in Rome, political power was slipping away from the Senate toward whichever general could command the loyalty of the legions. By 88 BC, Sulla had risen high enough to be elected consul, the highest office in the Republic. He was at the peak of his power, and then fate brought him into direct conflict with Marius. Early life and character formation. Lucius Cornelius Sulla was born in 138 BC into one of the oldest patrician families in Rome, the Cornelii. But by the time of his birth, his branch of the family had fallen into obscurity and poverty. He did not inherit wealth or prestige. Instead, he grew up with very little, wandering between shady taverns and cheap apartments in the city. It said he had fiery red hair, striking blue eyes, and a complexion that flushed easily, a man who stood out in a crowd. He was handsome, charming, witty, and dangerous. Sulla grew up as a man of contradictions. On one hand, he moved freely among actors, prostitutes, and gamblers. He enjoyed theater, poetry, and the company of courtesans. His rivals sneered that he lived like a low-class bohemian. But on the other hand, he had an almost chilling ruthlessness. He believed in omens and in the goddess Fortuna, the personification of luck. He was convinced that destiny favored him above all others. This mix of charisma, vice, and cold ambition would make him one of the most dangerous men Rome had ever seen. His early military service began under the famous general Gaius Marius, a man who, like Sulla, had clawed his way up from obscurity. Marius was a new man, the first of his family to rise into politics, and he had revolutionized the Roman army by recruiting the poor. For a time, Sulla was his loyal subordinate, but fate would turn them from allies into bitter enemies.
The March on Rome. In 88 BC, Rome was preparing for war against Mithridates VI, the ambitious king of Pontus in Asia Minor. This war was prestigious, lucrative, and politically powerful. Whoever led Rome's armies east would return with unimaginable wealth and glory. The Senate awarded the command to Sulla. But Marius, now old but still ambitious, was not ready to fade into history. He used his influence to have the command stripped from Sulla and handed to himself. For any other Roman, that would have been the end, but not for Sulla. Sulla made a decision that shocked the world. He turned to his legions, men who had fought and bled with him in the social war, and told them the truth, that their hard-won glory was being stolen. Then he gave the order no Roman general had ever dared to give before. They would march on Rome itself. Imagine the horror in the city. Roman citizens watching as Roman soldiers, legions armed for foreign conquest, marched through the sacred gates of their own capital. The Senate panicked, politicians fled, Marius scrambled to escape. Sulla's men stormed the city, cutting down resistance in the streets. Arrows whistled between rooftops, shields slammed against doors, and blood ran down the stones of Rome itself. Sulla had broken the ultimate taboo. He had shown that Rome's laws, Rome's traditions, Rome's republic meant nothing compared to the loyalty of an army to its general. In victory, Sulla reclaimed the command against Mithridates. Marius fled into exile, but the precedent had been set. Rome had been conquered, not by a foreign enemy, but by one of its own. Dictatorship and prescriptions. Sulla marched east and crushed Mithridates' forces in Greece and Asia Minor. His victories were brutal but decisive. He looted cities, slaughtered resistance, and returned to Rome rich beyond imagination. But while he was away, chaos returned. Marius came back from exile, rallied his supporters, and seized the city in a wave of terror. Senators were butchered, political enemies slaughtered. Marius, old and sick, died soon after, but his faction remained. By 82 BC, Sulla returned, and once again, Rome trembled. At the Battle of the Colline Gate, Sulla's forces clashed with Rome's defenders. The fighting was savage, with tens of thousands killed. But in the end, Sulla emerged victorious. This time, there would be no half measures. Sulla declared himself dictator, but not the temporary kind of dictator Rome had known before. He rewrote the rules, granting himself unlimited power until he saw fit to step down. And then came the prescriptions. Lists were nailed to the forum walls. Names of senators, equestrians, and wealthy Romans declared enemies of the state. Anyone could kill them and claim a portion of their property as reward. It was legalized murder, sanctioned by the state. Streets ran red with blood. Fathers betrayed sons. Slaves betrayed masters. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Sulla enriched his supporters and eliminated his enemies. palaces, villas, estates, all confiscated in the name of restoring the Republic. And yet, alongside this terror, Sulla embarked on sweeping reforms. He stripped power from the popular assemblies and restored it to the Senate. He expanded the Senate size, restructured the courts, and tried to rebuild the old republic in his own bloody image. He was both destroyer and reformer, tyrant and savior, a man who could sip wine in luxury while thousands died under his orders. Sulla's resignation and death. And then, just as suddenly as he had seized power, Sulla did the unthinkable again. In 79 BC, after years of absolute rule, Sulla announced his resignation. He stepped down from dictatorship, dismissed his bodyguards, and retired to a life of luxury in his villa near Naples. Romans were stunned. No one before had ever seized such power and then willingly let it go. In retirement, Sulla lived as he always had, indulgently. Banquets, wine, theater, and lovers filled his final years. His body, ravaged by disease, likely ulcers or liver failure, was in constant pain, but he laughed it off, writing his memoirs and boasting of his victories. In 78 BC, he died at the age of 60. His funeral was a spectacle. Despite the blood he had spilled, he was honored with a grand procession. His epitaph, which he supposedly wrote himself, declared, "No friend ever served me, and no enemy ever wronged me, whom I have not repaid in full." Legacy and impact. Sulla's shadow stretched far beyond his death. By marching on Rome, he showed that power did not lie with the Senate, or the assemblies, or the people. It lay with the legions and their general. By writing lists of enemies, he normalized political murder. By seizing absolute dictatorship, he showed how fragile the Republic truly was. And by stepping down, he proved that even absolute power could be treated as a personal possession, something to be claimed and discarded at will. The young Julius Caesar, spared from Sulla's prescriptions only through the pleas of influential friends, never forgot what he had seen. Caesar would later march on Rome himself, crossing the Rubicon and plunging the Republic into civil war. Pompey, Crassus, and others all followed Sulla's bloody example. In the end, Sulla had not saved the Republic. He had destroyed it. He showed Rome that one man could conquer it. And once that door was opened, it could never be closed again. Rome would never be the same. Sulla was many things: a gambler, a lover of theater, a brutal tyrant, a reformer, a visionary, and a destroyer. He conquered enemies abroad, but more importantly, he conquered Rome itself. In doing so, he reshaped history. He taught men like Caesar and Augustus how to seize power. He taught Rome that its republic was fragile. He lit the fire that would burn the republic to ashes and give rise to the empire. And so, the man who began life in poverty ended it as Rome's most feared dictator. A man who, in his own words, repaid every favor and every insult in full.